So yes, so Mike, that's what I was writing there. That's my big next goal is to do something like that. Folks, we're still waiting for Greg to just pop on in. As you can see, we have a bunch of us still here. Starting. Sorry about the glitch that happened a little bit earlier. I hit the wrong button and ended the event, so I had to go remake the whole bloody thing. So sorry about that. Yeah, such is life. So
it was cataclysmic.
Yes, well, I was freaking out a bit more than most, but
not cyclical.
My virgin ears.
I'm still going to do the preview, the thing that starts up that talks about does a little intro for Greg when he gets on here. If you guys don't know, Greg J runs his channel on YouTube, and it is fabulous, the work that he does and the way that he brings a real story, a real feel to the events of the cataclysmic era, or I call the Silver Age. I guess not really sure what the Saturnian, but yet there's the golden ends. Then there's the other age. We still have some more coming up about that with Julian West in the future as well. I'll have that to you as soon as possible. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and start this little intro with him, and then we can actually get to perhaps maybe talking about something while we wait, because we have Tanvir here. We have, of course, Rick, Chris from Take Back Space. We have Sean, Jim, Mike, and of course myself. So Ramon was here for a bit, but he had to go and take his friend, who is very interesting, isn't he, guys? I think it's can't wait. He's presenting the Electric Universe pretty much to the Kentucky, what's it called? Historical Society? I'm not sure if that's the name. Anyone know?
Kentucky Project?
I do not.
Ah, okay. He says it all the time, but he says it real quick.
Yeah.
I know. It's like the Kentucky. Anyway, let me go ahead then. Start this up. I'm just going to do the transition. This is so cool. I love this program, but I have it all lined up. So let's see what I can do here. Make it all like ninja-like. Welcome to the September 15th edition of the Electric View. I'm Neil Thompson. Today we are talking to Greg J., whose fantastic work explores the catastrophist side of the electric universe and all that it entails. Join us as we explore this wonderful world. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and all that other wonderful stuff. And we're back. Well, it's nice that we had that I had it all lined up ahead of time, so no sense changing it now. But so since we're waiting for Greg, Mike, you had a whole whack of questions that were just chomping at the bit because of the interesting stuff that came up with the Sapphire project recently. And of course, we were lucky enough to have Gareth on just a few months ago, actually. So we answered a few of them, but I know that you had more, and you had other things that you wished to express. So I don't want to hold you back, because it was a good thing. But obviously, I didn't want to hold the audience there any longer than I possibly had to.
Not at all. And I think that I'm probably as a rabid consumer of new information and videos and YouTube stuffs. I speak for a lot of people when I say the videos were amazing, and the insights and the were inspiring, and the potential for what we can see happening, imagine happening based on these technologies is almost overwhelming. The idea that there's a physicist somewhere out there whose ears are steaming because he can't comprehend the paradigm changes is really fascinating to me, and I really the imagery. It's like I want to paint a picture of an image in my head, and but I think the thing that on the tip of my sort of consciousness is the idea of the new elements being created in the crevices between the crystalline structure of the metals. That to me is an idea of, the alchemic tastiness of that is almost too delicious, and the idea of their fusion and creating new elements from the cracks between things is fascinating. What occurred to me and what kept me up at night was the idea of sound resonance and the structure created with sound. And if we can combine sound resonance with this production, we have a production of material and then the creation of something with that material in combination. And so the merging of these cutting edge technologies is what fascinates me, and the potential that we could use sound resonance to somehow control the growth of these elements within this sort of mini sun is sort of where my brain is wandering right now.
Okay, I can see that. Mine is automatically does when I see the pictures that I saw from Sapphire and the landscapes, as Monty said. They, I mean, clearly reminded you of some of these things that we've talked about in geology, hexagonal columns and so forth, and divots on the top. Was this happening because of a sort of like the Talvashar volcano, I think its name is, on Io, with the sort of the plasma gun look to it, where there's a central point which is being etched, and it sort of comes up and they say rains down around it, but in actuality, I think this is obviously an electrical process, and these filaments are coming down and reconnecting because of some plasmoid or plasma action at the surface of the body. Obviously,
there was
vacuum.
Also little holes in the crystalline structure of the metal.
I mentioned
Several
that. Yeah.
there were holes. So as something, it's I mean, obviously the
that's
idea
what I was trying to think of. How was this made?
Within. Yeah, I mean, there's these new elements that are forming, and then there's a hole through which what happens? Like it's smoking gun.
Think about it this way. This is my indication. If I'm thinking about these basalt columns rising up, and these are obviously not basalt, but bear with me. Like on Devil's or the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, or the Devil's Tower in Wyoming. I'm not sure what they both have to do with devils and giants, but anyway. So these
they're cool
because they're cool. But if you note, then these are structures that might be growing out of the top of the totally. of the metal, which was previously more smooth. I'm not sure. I don't know how it was prior to this cooking process, but he was right that certain materials should have been melting and weren't. So we have transfer of heat energy from areas to give energy to other areas, perhaps in a fusion type way. One of the ideas that hit me was this, like when I was talking about the towers being built in geology, we don't know what was happening right there between the double layer and the surface. So here we have this. Now we know on the sun there is these basically, there are so many giant pillars of fire that are tubes coming out of the surface of the sun that they then merge together into little dynamic but yet stable structures that push against each other like cells that you see from the top down. This is not convection. Convection doesn't do that clearly. So this is, it's a different process. So, but they're all connected. This is kind of what I'm seeing here. You see, you have these hexagons, and they're growing out. This is the end result. There's material being excavated from the middle, but during the points where like 3 of these things connect, now you have a division of forces where you have a central column rising up, which could be positive, negative on the outside, giving the calamitted feel of that column. These columns are rubbing up other columns, other pillars of fire, as it were, and they're now building up or moving material from in between themselves, perhaps, I don't know, up and causing something to happen while they're in that position where they have a balance between three different forces, if you know what I mean. So now you can have something want to pull material in one direction, but also in another. Well, what if some of the nucleus goes that way and some of the nucleus goes that way? Now, of course, this is gross oversimplification, but it is things like that.
That's how I like it, by the way.
That's how you like it. You see, that giant ramble is something that I hope that people. We were talking about the need to talk about this in a way that people can understand it, because it's hard to convey, especially when you're a professional and you know the actual lingo.
Right. I get that you feel like you're talking to a retard. Trust me, I get it.
Actually, I just sort of rambled and ranted there for a bit. So, but as long as you guys liked it, so you know.
It's so the sky's the limit. I mean, it's the possibilities are really truly quite expansive. I mean, it's an expansion of consciousness. I mean, that shit's real. It's real, and that's what I love about electric theory, is that sort of I heard ideas of expansion of consciousness long before I felt like my conscience had expanded, and I definitely, you definitely are contributing to that. It's amazing. It really is almost hard to put words together.
Well, you're being very kind, but I mean, I think that a lot of us have a yearning. I mean, the size of the world. I mean, we're living right now in an era where we can conceive of a world that they could not conceive of 100 years ago. I mean, science fiction used to be safari quests. That was it. Like there was no. I mean, going to the moon and 50,000 Leagues Under the Sea and the Time Machine were the first of their kind, more or less. I mean, perhaps maybe you could. No, I can't even Faust. I mean, although Delirious, I don't think it qualifies as sci-fi. So, we're on that level, and here it is where people are now, within the last 100 years, reaching into a whole new world of mental landscapes, and we don't recognize how much of our mental landscape has been painted or tainted, whatever the word might be, with the sci-fi that we've had. We can see, as I wrote in my paper, one of the things that I thought about a lot was the degradation of sci-fi technobabble, because people don't understand it. Well, that's probably because it's getting so esoteric, it might as well be friggin' magic, the way you guys are talking about it. Because it's not understandable. But in Star Trek, it was understandable because people.
It's reflective of science, though, in that science has become sort of a simulation of itself.
Oh, yes, you're absolutely right.
That's the way I see it. It's modern science fiction really has become almost religious.
But modern science is being based on previous science fiction.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like
early science fiction.
We always want to build the
fantastical creatures that we had not yet discovered, because that's where science was.
Right. Exactly. No one saw a rhinoceros before, and so when you talk about, I saw its fur, the golden sheen of its coat as it walked through the forest, like blah blah blah. Now they're describing a puma or something, or a tiger, and no one's seen that crap. I mean, not in Europe. Saw pictures of it, maybe. But so they want to see those things. So this is where these ideas come from. But this is where we took the next step. We're talking about in Star Trek, for example, I don't think there's anyone alive in science that doesn't think there's multiple dimensions, except for like the EU people. Like I don't see any reason for them yet. Like I'm okay if they happen, but it's just science fiction. There's no subspace or hyperspace that we've ever found.
Neil, do you think it's possible? This is what I think, and I wonder.
I don't know if I'm right, though. Of course, I'm just saying.
I agree, though.
Do you think it's possible that that multiple dimensions are really just orders of magnitude?
Well, that's an order of scale. I really did sort of enjoy that aspect of the Ant-Man in a way. Like the microverse.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
That kind of thing did hit me.
I mean, that is a literally fundamentally explainable way for people to live together and not be able to identify each other. It's the only rational one I've ever come across.
It's hard to imagine it in some cases a different way. Like there's the magnitude scale idea of like has the scale with time, so it's hard to envision, but there's a part of me that wants to and I described this before, trying to speed up the universe. So if you could magically step out of the galaxy, so now you've like literally stepped out of the galaxy and you're a huge being looking at the galaxies around the galaxy, the local group, and you could speed it up, and keep going faster, passing like 1 million years or whatever. Well, what is really going on here? Like electrically speaking, you'd see conduits, but would those conduits be tubes? Would they appear to be vessels? Are they part of a nervous system? Are they connected to dendrites? Or what am I looking at here? Because if you were to poke it slowly with your finger at the speed of that magnitude, it wouldn't bend. It would, again, be a collision of forces. Your finger is now pushing this tube that's connecting two galaxies. And you imagine you could play with it like a kid plays with the novelty plasma ball. He's just flicking his finger there. Well, it's doing that because your finger, if you were a giant being, is moving so slowly. All of the things that make up your self the galaxy strings connections would look solid. The whole thing would look like a web because you could see it because if you imagine the frequencies would all speed up, so it would go from dark mode to glow mode only because of the compression of time. You know what I mean? Like you'd start seeing things you wouldn't normally see because you can speed up the same way as if you take long exposures of, Andromeda or whatever. So this is the kind of things that hit me sometimes when I think about what's going on out there. Because we can pierce through it, little tiny us, because we're going between the forces, sort of like being injected between the cell membranes, like.
Well, yeah, it takes us 26 million years to make one revolution around the galactic plane. So.
Yeah, well, that's.
Yeah, so that even that's would be chronological orders of magnitude.
Well, I think that the orders of magnitude are a given. In fact, it was almost oddly enough. I don't want to go Ant-Man-ish again, but here we are. But
do it.
When he's talked about coming back in Endgame and he popped out of the machine, he was only in there for 5 hours, but 5 years went by. Right. So this is a situation that, and of course, I'm sure that if we've all watched enough Stargate or Stargate Atlantis or whatever, then.
Don't forget Jodie Foster going through that bubble.
You mean in Contact?
Yeah.
Well, see, the thing is that I know that the information that was transferred to her in that story was 18 hours worth because it was 18 hours of static. But, what really happened there? I think that's all a very interesting. It only left Contact for like 0.53 microseconds. So,
right.
Anyway, no, I love that story because it doesn't have a definitive ending.
Exactly.
It did have some crazy parts to it, but
It asks some amazing questions, though, doesn't it?
Oh, and also tells you a lot about us.
Yeah.
And it also explains that John Hurt can pretty much do whatever he wants. Pretty much.
Want to take a ride?
Yes, that was a good line. But
I watched that movie a lot, and I realized at one point, oh my God, I'm Matthew McConaughey.
You're Matthew McConaughey?
It was kind of horrifying.
I suppose.
I'd like to interrupt for a second.
Feel free. We're still waiting. So,
Holloway Arts has a question here. Has any of the Electric Universe group looked at Wa An Namas in Libya? It's not far from the Libyan glass fields. It looks like a fulgurate to me. I just had a look at the images of it. Oh my God, it's a strike for sure. It's definitely an electrical strike.
Well, let me not worry. Let me just pop over to the other screen and take a look. Do you have it linked?
Let me give you the link to the DuckDuckGo images I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Well, before I forget, I wanted to ask you a question on the whole topic of consciousness and multidimensionality real quick, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that insects and animals and bacteria are basically a version of human consciousness, or their own consciousness, their own parameters? Or are they just dimensional models, like magnitude?
My mentality is, well, it's not my strength. It's not my forte or whatever it's called. It's more Rupert Sheldrake's. I would almost always defer to him on the consciousness ideas, because although there's a part of me that sort of in the Babylon 5 type aspect of it, Delenn saying we are all star stuff, or now we make our own magic, or we are dreamers, shapers, singers, makers. We study the aspect of laser and circuit.
I mean,
Link
I've
is up.
listened to
perfect.
Rupert Sheldrake talk about it, though, I think, but it's sort of what I referred to last time, which was, are planets a version of a magnitude of consciousness above ours? Do they look at us like bacteria?
Where'd you send it, Rick?
In the Skype chat.
I went to the Skype chat. I don't see it.
It's the DuckDuckGo link.
Oh.
Or any of you guys. I was talking to Neil, but I was saying, like, this idea that planets are conscious, humans are conscious, bacteria is conscious. Are they magnitudes of different electrical charge density? Is it our location in the ether that defines levels of consciousness and charge?
At this point, I would love to just get to the point where we can define life. So we're not even there yet. Like, I mean, we don't know where viruses come from. And if it is correct that the history of our world seems to be so, that when these strikes happen, we get sick. Like, everyone really gets sick. And I don't think just because of radiation or something, although that could be the case.
No, because it imparts energies to viruses that are dormant and wakes them up. And
does it? Or does
I'm pretty
it?
Sure it does.
Does it? Or are the viruses being generated in space between the double layers on Venus and being transferred to our planet? Are viruses even terrestrial?
Hey, buddy.
See what I mean? There's those type of questions that pop up, and it's not me who made that first call. Oh, Buddy jumped in. I'm on another screen, so hey, Buddy. I saw he left, so I was like,
yeah. Hey guys, real quick, I've heard that come up too. Like, does the sun know how far the planets and satellites are away from the sun? Does the Earth know how far it's away from the sun?
Yes, instantly.
Yeah. We see like X-class type CMEs always, shooting away from the Earth. Does the sun know it's doing that? A lot of those questions, come up a lot. I mean, is that outside of our right now, our learning and understanding yet at this point? Seems like it, but it still, comes up, and that's interesting. Sheldrake is a good default with those ideas anyway.
Yeah, Chris, I say, I
Yeah.
think that we are at a place where we can separate out consciousness from self-awareness. And I think we can have conversations that distinguish one from the other. I think certainly ants, to use your example, have consciousness, but do they have self-awareness? And otherwise, do they have a sense of themselves as individuals?
Did we have
and separate from
self-awareness?
the-
Actually, can I just jump in there for 1 second?
Yeah,
like
man, hit
if you do, there is this idea, oh, we can't know things. But what if consciousness really just is a manifestation of this plasmic ether bubble, and we think, because of culture and words and love and this intimacy thing, we think humans just have this one thing that only humans have. But what I'm saying is, like, what if consciousness is just a manifestation of density, plasma, ether, electricity, right? And self-awareness is necessary at every level in order to know your neighbor, like in flock behavior or plasma distribution.
I believe the consciousness is the energy
That's-
that surrounds everything and is part of everything and makes everything.
But like self-awareness in
And it's
particular,
symbiotic.
like,
It's
yeah.
it's
go ahead.
completely symbiotic.
I totally
and,
disagree. Go ahead. Sorry, buddy.
it's wrapped up symbiotically around all other organisms. So there's a
Even in-
symbiosis on here
Even in
that
inanimate matter as well, buddy.
talk about.
Sorry.
I don't hear anybody talk about this other than Sheldrake really getting and nailing into the idea of what is it, self
The morphogenic field.
self-repeating patterns and the behavior of self-organization, really, and because it's all self-organized fields and self-organized consciousness, self-organized intelligence, and if you want to know something, ask and you shall receive. And this happens constantly. There's an unlimited well that we can tap into. And like the question that you were talking about just a moment ago, does the Earth know if how far it is away from the sun? Just reminds me of the Earth-facing calm of I think that's what they call it, from the sun.
Well, the thing, the eye or the Eye of Sauron imagery, I'm thinking about, like, if you look at your leg right now, right? There are probably little bugs and things like an ant. You're not going to notice an ant until you notice it, but you can have an interaction with an ant as this tremendously giant being towards the ant. The ant must look at us like we look at Earth, for example, or maybe a smaller planetoid, for example.
All of the hypochondriacs in the audience, please keep thinking about this.
So
so I'm just saying, is awareness that we see as interaction verbally or getting on Skype, for example, is that just a manifestation of a fractal dynamic versus we think it's this very specialized human thing? Ants must have a version of YouTube, and bacteria must have a version of YouTube, and the moon must have a version of YouTube. It doesn't seem like we can just extract the human race.
I hope it's better than ours.
well, if we can start personifying.
Stop telling me what to do. I'm doing my best.
If we can start personifying the sun and turn it into different characters, and turn it into, like, what does the sun desire? Does the sun want to be brighter than the other stars? Does the sun want to be in a harmonic, or the center of the galaxy, the central bulge of the galaxy, Sagittarius A, does it want to shine just right and give off these signals at certain times with cyclicity?
Welcome to the Silver Age, right there.
So it can be like,
buddy, that's an amazing thought. That's an amazing question.
Well, no. But even if they're not thinking about it in a real sense, we as people were trying to figure out what they wanted. Is it, now this is very interesting, is it possible, because we've all heard about Rupert Sheldrake, obviously we heard consciousness. Wall Thornhill talks about the instant connectedness between galaxies. We know that decay rates change on planet Earth just prior to an event on the sun, which means there must be an instant connection. So all of this plays to that idea. However, there you have a connection that's instant, but do we actually have proof that it's conscious? Well, I'd say at the moment, no. But we don't even know what consciousness even is. Like your mental idea of saying no, the imagine, like the I. Well, that's very close to what Julian James would talk about the idea of a mental eye that can move from place to place through time. We used it earlier when we talked about imagine yourself outside the galaxy. That is what I'm talking about.
Well, that's the scrying glass, basically looking into
Right.
Right.
That's real. That's a real thing.
But
and some people practice it, and it actually happens.
Anyone who's played with Lego practices it. But what I'm saying is, or a cardboard box. But cats practice it. Is what I'm saying. But what I mean is that there's
a sick burn.
There's actually a situation then that happened on Earth that we don't have writing before a certain time, or maybe we all thought a different way of being, like all of one conscious idea, like a tribe of monkeys or whatever, and we were building things. Maybe we were, but we weren't separate from each other in our mental states, which is interesting. But that would be a golden age thing, and we were looking to get back to that, it seemed. But because we noticed that in our divination processes, what we were trying to do was trying to predict what things in the sky plasma were doing and how to make it right before they killed us, right? So that we had to, for our own survival, think outside of ourselves. Was it that alone, or those ideas, that concept that allowed us to actually become conscious? Do you know what I mean? And why did it only happen to us and not other creatures? Or did it, and they can't even express it? They're capable, like a dolphin, but we just can't understand what the hell they're talking about. And
maybe we just say that, and we just watch them on YouTube. There are millions of videos right now with animals acting just like humans. And getting more and more human. They just need the practice of doing that. But it's this kind of, it's just a magnitude of acquiring skill sets within the parameter of consciousness.
Exist on a scale.
Okay, no, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on the idea that animals are smart, but I'm referring to the idea that they have religion and remembrance of ages past and pass that down to others. You know what I mean?
Neil, you saying this made me think of an idea that's kind of separate, but it goes along with it. You know how in society, so what we're dealing with scales and networks. You have to size up a society if you want to make it a galaxy. Okay, so let's take a society, and you have mavericks, you have the radical free thinkers that stand out, and revolutions happen from those individuals.
Right.
That's a fact, and they're rare, and they're all over, and they happen throughout history. Now, then you scale that up to a galaxy. Now, what makes maverick or rebel stars? What makes an anarchist star stand out and be different, and maybe implode or explode in a certain way that other stars don't? And that's what we're looking for.
A leather jacket.
We're looking for the anomalies.
A silver Porsche, James Dean, the hair.
I would suggest that there was differences in the magnetic fields, differences in the amount of power being supplied to it or taken away from it, or just those types of differences that we're seeing in plasma experiments cause matter out there to react differently.
By the way, guys, this gentleman who suggested to go look at this thing, I have it blown up on the screen right now. It's amazing.
Yes, I was wanting to get back to this, and
well, I haven't stopped looking at it. It's been on the screen the whole time. I wasn't going to stop you. I wanted to look at it. So, I mean, when someone suggests something Usually there's a
Holloway
reason.
Arts, by the way. Sorry.
It's what?
The name of the person who suggested looking at this is Holloway Arts. Thank you, Holloway Arts.
Where exactly is this again?
The Libyan desert.
Oh wow.
It's in the Sahara, yeah, and it's called Wa Namas. Wa An Namas. But so you have a material like this. I wouldn't be able to tell this was not Mars. Okay, but you have I mean, if you look what you have two connections. So you have a positive type of negative strike that look like they're just opposites of each other. Something ripped up and deposited like sort of in a loop beside itself. And look at all that material. Like, I wonder what that is for material, the type of material it is. And of course, you can see nearby some striations that look very similar to Mars, the way that it just the way the dunes are. I don't know if they're
Well, also
rock
look
or
how
not, but
the mountain range comes down on the one side in a half of a arc, and then on the black side it goes back up on the other side as a lighter patch. Do you see that?
well, and there's clearly also deposition in the sense of if you look at a elevation map, you can see where it looks like this one has been dug down and this one's been sort of like a bunch of piles of stuff have been put on top of it.
Right, the one side was deposited and the other side was removed and blackened.
So what makes them think it's actually a volcano? Like, I'm just wondering.
Is that linked in the chat too, guys? That's linked in the chat.
Yeah, it's the
Rick,
gogoduck.com link there below Chris's NASA image thing.
Oh yeah. I
Gotcha.
That's what I was going through. I
Okay.
thought for a moment I was actually just going through Google, but I guess I wasn't. So I was duck going. Good for the duck. But yeah, there's the pictures were just stunning, and you could see it doesn't even match. Is there a lake in the middle of that thing? Am I seeing this right? Sorry, I'm just very impressed with what I'm looking at.
It looks like a lake to me.
And another one that's kind of red up the side. So they just think this is then a volcano. It might not be, although the redness of that lake indicates perhaps volcanic activity in the area. It could still be arcing in the sense that there are still plasmoids underground that are focusing electricity. I don't know. There's the idea.
Welcome, Robert.
Hey, Robert.
Hey, Robert.
There's ideas then that the like this makes me think about supervolcanoes, Yellowstone. What are we really looking at when we say that? I mean, I know what Rodney McKay would say, and I know what John Shepard would say about how to shoot a drone underneath it, and But yeah, besides some sort of stuff like that, I mean, we really don't know what's under these things, and we don't drill into them.
Holloway just said it has a moat too.
I noticed.
Apparently.
Yeah, look at this thing. Like you see an actual friggin' moat. I mean, obviously it would be noticed because people would go here. I mean, look at the palm trees in the thing. They're only like friggin' a centimeter tall on my screen. They're just tiny little things. So this is a full-fledged oasis.
Nice.
It's dipped in at around the bottom. Now, instantly, my thoughts are, if I see that kind of dip there, I immediately start getting that feeling of a spinning ring current going around it. Etching out a sort of tunnel, if it were.
Right.
I don't know if that's.
Yeah.
Like a toroid kind of a thing going on?
Well, there's one around Uluru too. If you go look at Uluru, you can see the striations and pockmarks in lines across the top of Uluru, the Ayers Rock in Australia. But
this energy Duff would be coming from above down.
No. A ring current actually is because there's current going into the Earth, and as you can imagine, it's right near the bottom. There's a right-hand rule being in effect, which of course is why a tornado makes a tornado.
Right. Okay.
But right near the base of it, where it connects to the Earth, this is where things are going to be very strong. So you would expect then to generate a potential sort of, I guess it would be like a torus or like a bubble, like you would blow in water, a smoke ring, but it's not running
like a
on
vortex.
Yeah, it's not running on the same principles, but you can see how it etches things around. It's like a snake of fire running across the landscape, as Michael Steinbacher would say. This is why they're generated, because they're going laterally across the landscape. This is very important that most people don't get about Andy Hall's work, is that the chevrons on the side can only be reproduced if they're being hit by shockwaves that are being generated by something going down the valley, like down the valley, like not coming down to the earth from top down, but a ring current being generated by something that's coming top down nearby. But these shockwaves are not just a coming down pow type of effect, which they're basically a sustained shockwave going shooting out supersonic blasts that impress themselves upon the valley walls.
Would it have looked like an electrical tornado?
It would have looked like an electrical eel going across the landscape, assuming you could live through it, which you couldn't.
Or a dragon, maybe?
Oh yeah, if it was higher up and you were further away, yeah, dragon
Well, the
would
Aborigines,
be. Yeah, totally.
The Aborigines of Australia described these snakes that were carving out the landscape, carving out the river system.
But they would also sometimes they would talk about, like, for example, China has this big thing about fish, carps, but they jump out of, like, jade carps would jump out of the water over the Pacific, right? And they would jump out and they would come back down again. So they would see them coming up and going down. And I think that's might be what we're seeing at the top of some things in Göbekli Tepe. But at the same time, I saw a really good expose on it recently that talked about the constellations in their order, because there's obviously a big scorpion on it. So, if you look for Scorpio, and then you can see another one that looks like a constellation nearby, and so on. So maybe it's a depiction of the sunrise or sunset, depending on where you were at what solstice, right?
Well, as I understand astrology, the ancient symbols, the ancient animals that we know today, like Taurus, and were different. They used different stars to make those constellations.
Says who?
If you go back in time, there was 13 constellations in ancient times.
Oh, no problem. I will do that. Just 1 second. Doc Brown, we need to go back in time.
Okay.
He'll
There
be
you
here
go.
in a
Did you
minute.
get there?
I'll let you know last Thursday. Anyway.
I can't stop thinking about that Cher song.
No, I'm not ever going to sing that song. I'm never going to open my mouth. It's already in my head, you bastard. God damn it.
Do it.
No, I won't. It won't go away.
At least it's not that other Cher song.
And I can still see her outfit too. It's terrible. Oh my God. I mean, even if she was like.
Cher is a part of the fabric of our lives, gentlemen. Face it. Deal with it. Just embrace the Cher.
All right.
Just let Cher happen. Just let Cher happen.
I can cope with that. Okay, so trust me, not the worst thing I've ever seen. I mean, I grew up with Madonna around, so that's pretty bad. And I shouldn't be dissing. I'm not just dissing women. There were other men who were also horrible. Don't worry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about Cher.
No. It's fine. It's just that you're right. As soon as you hear that, you can't get that out of your head. It immediately hit me, and I was like, God, stop. And I refuse to even, because I know if I even do it, it'll be in my head all day. Okay, so moving forward, not thinking about that song.
Just think of Power of Love, Huey Lewis.
Oh no!
Oh my God, you got me there.
My brain just crashed. I need to restart.
Oh my God. It reminds me of that part in Thor Thor Ragnarok, where he sees the Hulk in the thought tub and he goes, oh, a naked Hulk. Oh, it's in my brain now. So that's how they get around that whole PG-13. He didn't swear at all. Just everyone imagined just a giant cucumber for 10 to 15 seconds. Anywho, obviously we're having some problem with Greg. So Rick, are we having any luck with our friend here?
Well, I've been monitoring the Skype, waiting for his little green dot to show up on his icon, and still not yet.
I'm gonna hop into and
Is
now.
there
And,
anybody else named Greg we can talk to?
yeah, I mean, everything's set up for a person
Just
named Greg.
Any Greg.
Yeah. If we can find a guy named Greg, I can get Jason Mewes here as Jay and Silent Bob, and we're good to go. I'm looking forward to that movie, by the way. I just
I'm
love it.
David,
I'm
did you
looking
hop
at,
on Electric Universe Eyes?
Dave's pretty awesome. Is
Say
he
what?
around?
I was going to ask you, any new experiments, man? Also, how you doing? Happy Sunday. And also, Robert, what's going on? How are you?
Happy Sun's Day.
I'm sorry, I'm sharing a screen, so I can't always see everybody. So,
Just saying
hi,
what's up,
Dave.
being social.
Hey, what's up, bud? Yeah, I hopped in about 15 minutes ago, I think.
I think Robert is actually on a out in the woods still. I saw some shots from. I don't know if he tried to go live there, but we didn't hear anything. But I know that I know how hard it is when you're out there. So
Yeah, Hawthorne, give us an update. Come on, man. What's up? Tell us about
There's
some
the-
rocks.
well,
Before
assuming
you
he's
go,
not out
there's the
there
13
driving or something right now. So
Before you go, there's the 13 signs of the zodiac.
Oh, yeah.
And
I thought there was 12.
has been one that was removed.
removed. Did we blow it up? Did the god blow it up? Did someone blow
No,
it
it
up?
just somehow they just removed it.
Just somehow.
It was a Pluto thing.
I bet it was Persephone, that harlot.
Well,
We
but
have
now-
Persephone. Give her back. Hades replies, "No, she has you, boys. Good luck." Like,
Don't we have pretty some evidence to suggest that that we used to have a 365-day year,
we do
As
now
well.
currently have a 365-day year.
a 360-day year, excuse me. My bad.
Yes, and a 260-day, according to some.
270-day year, a 320-day year, a 340-day year, a 360-day year, and a 365-day year. Then back to 360 days.
I don't
then
even
back
know where
ahead
you're getting
to
this information, but
365.
it wouldn't
Rick-
surprise
yes,
me in
what
the
Rick
least.
said. What Rick said, yeah.
I
So
only
that's
saw a
what-
certain, like,
The other
I'm
ideas as far as time goes.
only
I
voiced
can't
first in some
tell
of
you
them.
where
so.
I got my information. It's all contained in my head. I don't write down references. I don't write down paper. I don't do research. I just
You don't do
put all this
research, but you
information
just
in my
keep
head.
you just keep it in your head.
I think
Well-
F. Cochran has some papers on it. And there's some
Well, actually, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, it was Ev Cochran that probably gave him a timeline. See, that's the thing. There's been timelines made by different people, and I try to give them as much credit as I can because often they are all different, and I'm okay with that because, like others have said, just getting the order, is a good step forward. But
Yeah, Ev rings a bell, by the way.
okay.
So
I just
so
want
a
to give credit where
13-month
credit's due, so.
Zodiac would also imply a 13-month year. Am I not making that connection
Well,
correct?
sure, but there was
Yeah.
10 months in Rome, so
Right.
did
But I'm just saying
that no, that blows my mind just thinking, did we move from 340 to 360 during then? I would hazard to think that occurred that late.
Yeah.
Well, I believe, the sequence of events, the way that I see it in my mind, if we had a 270-day year that as our first memory and first, time accounting, when Chronos ended, or when the Purple Dawn ended and the Silver Age began, we started thinking about time because we could see the crescent, wrapping around, going around Saturn as we were being pulled into the solar system. When Saturn got up to the ecliptic, it stopped. We stopped. Everything stopped at the ecliptic. We're billions or millions of miles below the ecliptic in the polar configuration, closer into the sun, 270-day year orbits. And when Jupiter came into the picture and they went out, we were tugged out a little bit, and little by little, event after
Well, there
event.
was some small events,
as-
but yeah, there must have been a
as
few
we-
big ones.
Yeah, as well, the two big ones were Jupiter. The one big one was Jupiter
Clash of the
and
Titans.
Saturn breaking us up, and them
Clash of
going
the
out,
Titans.
and then tugging us out, sort of. But it, it tugged on Venus harder than us, and it tugged on Mars a little harder than us. So
That's
they ended
odd
up in
because
elliptical orbits, and then we popped up into the ecliptic in a sort of elliptical orbit, but less. So we crossed Venus's orbits for 750 years until Mars straightened Venus out for us. And that's the way I see it.
Oh,
And that,
no, that's a
as
very
that's
interesting
happening, our
rendition. I like how you
calendar
have
year-
it, but one of the things that I wanted to let the viewers know is if you're wondering what we mean by orbits, if you think about it, Venus, a 260-day orbit would be closer to the orbit of Venus, if assuming we were traveling at the same speed we are now. So 365 and 1/4 is currently what we're at. But as you can imagine, then every instance that we ran into people, or almost ran into people, or encountered the gods close enough to see their surfaces at a range, then because of some of the things, for example, wearing leopard skins, for example, that's clearly Martian. Mars has a pockmarked southern hemisphere, a very smooth upper hemisphere, and Olympus Mons sitting there. So there you have that would be your nipple, so this is why you wear their clothes that way in in representing the warrior god. These type of things. Now it doesn't happen everywhere because nowhere but Africa had leopards. So you can't have something that represented something without, like you could paint it, but, and that becomes stylized over time, however, in this type of instance, this is what I'm picturing in that type of thing. So we're dealing with a sky that was obviously tumultuous, which is why we're wondering in the consciousness aspect, how did that affect us? Clearly we sort of did, I think, what we do today, where we identify with heroes, like we all love Die Hard. We all identify with John McClane, and this is the thing he's doing, and he's doing all this stuff. Well, this is the kind of stuff that we identify with the warrior god. So now, for ever since fucking 1990, everyone was comfortable with being bald because here comes friggin' what's his name running in there, Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis. What you talking about, Willis?
But he's a warrior god. So is Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're basically depictions of it. In fact, often he plays warrior gods. So.
Okay, so question. So is that partly due to the zodiac? So is it that we go through an age where certain types of attributes of humanity rise to the fore, and now that we're moving into the next phase of the zodiac, different consciousness choices are made on Earth in a way that resonate with the rest of the universe?
Imagine you were just given the zodiac and a smattering of these stories. What would you do with them? Would you start doing exactly what you said and associating them with certain times? Would you try to identify the time so that people would know when it was? But you don't actually have good timekeeping skills yourselves. You reference things by, 2 years before the last big flood there, type of thing. And here you are trying to depict that, put things in the sky correctly and that type of thing.
Well, I was going to say 270 is a division of degrees on a circle, right? So it's 90, 180, 270, 360. The idea that it's 365 is aberrant, but it's still really trying to count based on a circle.
In fact, banks still use a 360-day year for the same reason, I assume, because the money lenders were running a 360-day calendar and they didn't change. Why would they?
Well, it's the simplest form of the ether, taking the shape of a sphere, like an elliptical sphere, like a stretched sphere.
Well, we could do 400, but there's something somehow mentally easier for human beings to deal with 12s and 3s. We're very comfortable with those. Like I can find numbers easier sometimes, but obviously 10 is the metric system and so forth, much easier. But if you're trying to deal with circles and radians, yeah, 12 is a much easier number to play with. I mean, have you ever done math in gradients? No, because no one likes doing that.
Yeah, but when you do space, I mean, the way the precession works, actually, when you do astronomy, you start really having to use that stuff. Like I had to dig up all my old, like I didn't really learn it in high school, so I had to relearn a lot of it, or just learn it for the first time as an adult.
I'm not touching that. Jim will have to teach you a lesson right now. Jim, feel
No,
free
I
to
don't
teach him a lesson. Just teach him a lesson on precession because he needs one apparently. Take back space and getting all cocky here.
No, not at all.
I'm really just kidding.
I'm not trying to at all brag. I don't know.
No. It's funny because Jim is an expert on precession. His entire thesis is the thing that he had to get off his chest for the last 2 years has been precession. And that's, if you read stuff on Garris, see the pattern there, you can see Jim did some good specials there. I was trying to get my friend into it, but of course, you know, he's my friend and he'd rather talk about cars. And he's like, oh, don't talk science or I'm freaking going home. So, but he's done some good work there. We did a little special on before you came on, I think not even 2 months ago. It's,
No, I saw it. I thought it was amazing.
Oh, okay, good.
It just kind of, it's more the relational side of math to philosophy. So for example, like resolution, the word resolution, the idea of resolving an image.
Resolute, yes.
But you use arc seconds, arc degrees. You use the kind of circular trig and, matrix trig really.
Right.
To kind of define our ecliptic, to define the solstices, to define how you see things through a telescope. It's really fascinating. But then you apply the kind of idea of focus, resolve, these words that are really used in terms of consciousness, in terms of discipline, studying, and to these ideas of vision, which is, I think, really interesting. So anyway, point is, it's fascinating to be able, like, there are certain things we, at the size our eyeballs are at, we can't resolve things without a tool. And then you add a tool to it and then you can resolve more. And then if you add a huge telescope, you have like a 400-inch telescope, you have maximum resolution. And then you add a camera to that and you add more resolution. And so they do that in reverse with all these microscopes, like the SEM data from Sapphire's out. It's just insane, like how much they can zoom in. Like as a kid, I was like, one day they'll be able to zoom in so close that you'll see all these things. But what do you see? You see cliffs, stratification, and spheres, and stuff you see at our size. It's unbelievable, you know, to some degree. Basically just keeps, it's holographically consistent and fractally consistent throughout. But at different points, it resolves to different things is the point. So at one point it's randomness and chaotic, and at one point it makes sense. And then you zoom out a bit more, it's random and chaotic, and then you pull out some more, makes a lot of sense.
I think that you're probably right. I'm actually just reading some amazing things in the chat because we were talking about when's Greg Jaking on, and then they're talking about our math ideas, base 60 and so forth, and then some ideas about someone was like, they've been doing this for tens of thousands of years, you know, and they're not wrong. We've seen some wonderful things recently. I think actually Jim pointed this out too a while ago when we were talking about this gentleman named oh my God, I can't believe it just suddenly slipped out of my head there. He's the gentleman that has the moving pole. What am I missing here? The moving North Pole of the planet.
Antonio.
No, it's Mario Buildreps.
Oh, Mario, yeah.
Right. Thank you. I guess Antonio was all I needed. It was like Italian. Yes, Mario. That's exactly what it was. I'm good. That's all I needed to know. Yes. But he did some amazing work, and we've talked about it before, but for those who are new, because we have like 40 people watching, so I'll go and take a look here while we're waiting. Maybe you might have to go get Kronos at a chat and bring him on here, because apparently they're gonna be talking about Saturn, and he's the only other one I know that talks about this stuff.
tried to? Have you emailed him with the Skype address and all that?
Well, he's already been on here with us, and I confirmed the meeting date, 15th, 1 p.m. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Kronos, get your butt over here.
There you go. Anyway, let me go grab that. Yeah, okay. This is the one here, yes. We start talking about moving poles. The reason this becomes interesting to me is because it basically sort of broke my brain, because I began to realize how long ago these things have been running for. Like how long humanity might have been on this earth. Now, even if the days are 260 instead of 360, it's 2/3 of what they were, thereabouts. Still, that's a significant amount of years. It could also explain a few things that we don't understand, like why did the ice might have not grown as much in those years? Well, because there's only 260 days in those years. The growing season would only be, you're still angled the same, but the seasons would all be shorter. But the lag of seasons would be the same. So it would drag into, plus you're at 260 days, so you're much closer to the sun. So we're talking about hotter, we're talking about but at the same time, we happen to have ice ages while this is happening. So there had to be something covering up the poles if we're that close. See what I mean? Or debris that's dimming the sun. There's so many things that suddenly, which we're not allowed to talk about. Let's just be honest. What we're talking about right here is scientific heresy in a way. So
yeah, which also none of the computer models reference or even include. So
well, and how could they? we can't even get it straight. So generally speaking, we have some parts that are much more straighter than others, but what probably needs to be done at this point is we need to bring the visualization to a much more Marvel level.
Hey Neil, are you familiar with implosion energy as opposed to explosive energy? With respect to the Sapphire project, they're talking about how one of the ways we understand how atoms work is because we blow them up, and the idea that this inverse, like hot should be cold and cold hot. These concepts are sort of lining up with the like ancient spinning machines that we've seen. There's one in the Cairo Museum. They call it a disc or a lamp, but it's obviously like an impeller.
Duffy, have you looked into Victor Schauberger's work?
Yeah, I think that name rings a bell. That might be where I've gotten some of my.
Yeah, you need to look into Victor Schauberger and his work with the implosive energy of water that he was using, and then as the Germans grabbed a hold of him, it was mercury. He switched to mercury.
Yes, which brought me to the ancient temples in South America, the Aztec temples that were flooded with mercury. There's a lot of connections out there. But I wonder if this implosion energy idea is something that can be applied to the Sapphire.
Well, we'd have to define it more if it even is a real thing.
Yeah, we definitely have. I think it's this guy you're talking about who showed video of like what an impeller looks like as composed to a propeller, and the idea of how energy is transferred. I think he's the same guy that he designed a little 50-watt kind of a real small little fan to go inside these giant water containers, the water from going stagnant.
Right.
And it was a low energy impeller that basically created a low energy vortex of water inside the this huge
inside the egg-shaped chamber. Yeah.
It was actually a giant water tower, and this enormous volume of water was being spinned by this tiny little impeller that was sitting at the bottom of the tank. and so it was a, all the
Oh,
scientists who've
because
gone
of the
in there before.
shape of how he ran it and the
Yeah,
the
it drew water into itself and then pushed it out from beneath, as opposed to pushing out. It drew water, and so
yeah.
it created a vortex naturally that was a very low energy vortex, but it was enough to keep the water moving, and it was keep keep the biological elements out of it.
Actually,
Well, they would
that
say
makes a perfect
oxygenated.
sense. Yeah, no, I would do something similar if I was trying to keep something basically fresh, as you would say. You'd want to keep it moving. Yeah, put something like a small fan at the base of something,
Right.
and point it downwards, and make it go up the side, and it would have to go all the way up to come down that middle chamber again.
Yeah, creating a vortex or a toroidal shape.
Yes,
really,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know.
No,
it's
it's
there's
lovely
a lot
stuff.
of connections. Stuff's coming together.
Well, and we don't even
There's
know.
actually pictures you can look up on the internet. The ancient spinning machine, ancient called a schist. It's a schist disc. They call it.
Oh, you think that's what this is? No, I know what the schist disc is.
Yeah, and I'm suggesting, or had also, I can't take credit for it, but it's been suggested that it's an impeller.
Huh. Take a look. It's also called apparently the Cebu disc, and
yeah, they say it was used to make rope or all this different. They have different ideas, but
well, I could picture, just looking at it right here. I mean, I could picture, I could hang some ropes on it and spin them fast if I needed to somehow make I guess the word would be, if I needed to refine some blood plasma. I don't know what I would use that for.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like an ancient religious artifact. It looks like technology.
Well, we have to, right now, anyone who's listening, no one in this chat thinks that the ancient peoples of Earth were cavemen. So this is where we're at, okay? They lived in a different world. They lived in a different world. I don't know how tough they were, but some evidence that they seem to be fairly high tech. So
yeah, I think
after 12,900
smarter than us.
After 12,900 years ago, after there was only 3,000 of us left on the planet, we became cavemen.
you think? No, I'm with the cavemen part to hide. Trust me, we were just talking about this. I'm really up for it. Right. But I just mean, when we were in the time of the golden age, prior to that, that's the time that we're referring to, because we have history because we had the gods doing things. But I mean, Saturn doing the thing and rotating around might as well have just been a countdown for all that mattered to us, until finally it was like, oh, things are going to hell, and things went to hell. And yeah, people died everywhere, and it was very horrifying, and I'm sure that it sucked. Total bum. But now here we are.
Not cavemen like the movie Quest for Fire. Remember that movie
years ago? Oh, of course I do. Ron Perlman's first job.
Right. I mean,
I
Canadian film.
And we were talking earlier, I think, just from the Julian Jaynes work.
Yes.
That we're the collective consciousness of the golden age. It doesn't seem like we've ever regained the second brain mind, if you will. That we're, they say we use 10% of our brain and we don't have access to it. It seems like we're blocked from it. That's what it seems like to me.
Just like the Bible says.
But is that true?
In the story of the Anunnaki, when they created us, they limited us, and yeah.
No. I mean, is that I'm the reason I say is it true is because, I mean, Anunnaki aside, one of the things that comes to mind is just, and you might have stories of this, how in tune your elders were about other humans. Like the way that we are now and the way that we are influenced by Bernays, you could say that's unique in the propaganda aspect of mind control or whatever you want to think. But in actuality, this was pretty much the aspect of the Roman Catholic Church's, what was it called? The Jesuit priest guys there. They were sort of like the the propagandists for the church back then. But is that true? So the reason I bring this, I mean, I know that part's true, but I mean, what could we possibly think when you can't consider certain things, when you're not allowed to think? I mean, it's just simply, I mean, you couldn't even imagine space travel. So you couldn't even imagine what space was, because no one even knew what was up there. The sky could just continue all the way to the moon. We thought that was made of cheese. Like, we knew nothing. But
Can I suggest something?
of course,
I've just been listening to this whole. So what if the Godhead, which is the devil
this is very
and the God, and good and evil together, right? This idea that if you announce your plans, the devil is always one step ahead of you, right? So we're always on the verge of calamity. Yet somehow this is what creates life, this idea that everything's about to be destroyed at every second, at every moment, at every magnitude, which actually creates the manifestation which we call existence.
well,
So necessity.
actually, you just described Julian Jaynes' work, except that his work would probably say that instead of thinking about it as basically, imagine that we suddenly needed to plan, that we didn't have to plan before, like really plan, and we didn't have to think about what other people wanted. Okay, I could see in your eyes what you want. Okay, because I could see you. Like I can read your expressions. You're another human. I'm good at that. That we have an entire section of our brain for that. But,
Same way animals think today.
well, except they might do with smells or whatever. But yes, I mean, there's reason why animals show their teeth or whatever.
Electroreception,
Well, they use-
baby. It's all about
use-
the electroreception.
Yeah, they use visual cues a lot too.
Well, anyway, I didn't want to get
Twitching of the
into
tail
the
or whatever.
specifics of all that, but what I meant is that we were much more in tune with each other even just a few years ago when we didn't have television. We had to know each other. Like, we knew that guy's funny in the head. You know,
I don't know. I don't agree. I don't know if I agree with that. Actually, look at
Okay.
it now. We have 40, almost 30, 40 people in the chat. All of the people
Oh.
on Skype. Aren't we more in tune than we've ever been before? I don't think we were more in tune 50 years ago. People who were really trying to get together about science.
No,
They were
no, I
way more
meant
isolated.
the way that we identified people and we looked them straight in the face and we saw who they were, as opposed to being in a situation where we, act now and you can buy this, blah, 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 like the 1950s people who, or 60s, and we started like, I don't know, being a bit more, I don't know if the word is innocent.
No,
But,
I think we're experiencing exponential change.
oh, that's
I think
true.
Yeah.
No argument
that's
there.
the reality, and it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, true. I mean, Leonard.
I'm just saying the
Mark-
gauge of better or worse. That's all I meant. Yes,
Oh,
it's
okay.
completely different. But I just mean like saying that the past was better is.
No.
you
That's
could go into
nostalgic.
cement,
That's
yeah.
no. I mean, in the golden age, to them it was better. Yes, but because obviously, currently the gods want to kill them. So if you were thinking the Silver Age, right? But now we're beyond that. It didn't just end though. The world just sort of slowly stopped being crazy, but we didn't. We still sort of carry that on, like with story and film and action and deed. I could think of no better one than that really twisted version of Sherlock Holmes. Kind of no, it wasn't Sherlock Holmes. It was the murder of it was Johnny.
Michael Armstrong talks about what you're referring to. That's a big part of his sort of contribution. Is
That's why I like
the
talking
ancient-
about to him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that ancient wound, that ancient traumatic, that PTSD, to use a coined phrase, that we experienced collectively as a living as one living organism. We've been beat up a lot, and we're used to a lot of abuse.
I give you the closest envisionment of that in order that I can think of. Besides, like, okay, you go from Godzilla trashing a city or something. Okay, that's one image of it, because nuclear bombs. Okay, and it's another. But then maybe 1992 you had or 1991 it was Sarah Connor and the nuclear bomb going off in Terminator 2, and she's holding on to that chain link fence, you know, that, and all the kids blow up and the whole playground blows up and everything, you know, that scars you. And then there was Independence Day. That was another one that got me because of the way that they did the special effects. But right until we saw, what was that other one called? It was Star Wars Rogue One, maybe, where the Death Star fires for the first time and blows chunks off planets just with one laser. And that, when you're sitting on the planet and watching it come towards you, that was the first time I saw anything that was closely like an actual strike, like an actual God strike. You know that.
Ooh,
you know, we can't live with it. Our brain breaks. We can't envision a wall of material 200 miles high coming over our heads, and you know, like it just doesn't. We're done. Our brain breaks. Like.
But may I just
like a switch in us.
Yes.
Let me just keep playing devil's advocate, but you just did.
Yeah.
You just did create you, while also saying that that we're not capable of envisioning that. You've actually just manifest that vision in my head. Everybody on the chat, you know what I mean? Like we are both contrarian and creators at exactly the same moment.
I think I was more referring to those weird situations where, I mean, I can create that vision now, but we linked together over a common imagery that was created by someone. In a lot of ways, it feels like, and I could be wrong, but like Michael might say, Michael Armstrong, we are trying to relive this all the friggin' time, but that was as close as I've ever seen, and that visceral feeling of the world changing, the abyss with that wall of water that just came up and stayed there, you know, those feelings.
Or didn't they just did that in Interstellar?
And we get order out of chaos.
Yeah,
Chris.
Unfortunately, Interstellar just makes me barf because I was like, no. I mean, it had
I'm
moments,
with you.
but
I'm just saying, I'm completely with you. It makes me barf. But they did the wall of water. They did a black hole. When
You guys, I gotta tell you,
basically sell an idea.
1974 earthquake. That was my first taste of blood. That's where I got the.
Oh, that was a good one.
You had an earthquake?
Oh,
That was a good one.
Oh man!
Oh, a movie.
I didn't know it first contained, and it was against me until that movie came out. It was 1974.
Really,
Something
earthquake.
like
Towering
Earthquake.
Inferno is another one, I would
And
assume.
then come right out after that. I watched that on in the back of a pickup truck in Bakersfield, California. That scared the, and you get a
Poseidon
sense of,
Adventure.
oh my God, the world could be a different place. Yeah, baby.
No, but they're
Ooh,
all like
scary.
build-ups. You're building up over time. Like we're going back in time, right? But through cinema, we are trying to continually, like, because I mean, it took a while before the disaster movie took off. Yeah,
Sent to us.
and then
you guys-
world-destroying messages, which
You
is
guys will remember this quote, right? Fear is the mind killer.
fear is the little root that brings total liberation. That one.
Don't fear. Fear is the mind killer, and it forces us to do things that we shouldn't be doing. Just if it, I feel if it comes, it's coming, and there's nothing I can do about it. So don't fear it.
May I
See, I
respond?
think I'm a.
Do not fear the Gom Jabbar, is what you're saying.
It's the most quoted commandment in the Bible. Fear not.
Oh, I thought you meant the Bible was Frank Herbert's Dune. And I was like, okay, well, baby.
Well, I was actually quoting, fear is the mind killer.
No, I know.
but yeah.
Fear is the little death that brings total liberation. Yeah.
Can I throw in a comment from the chat? Because I think it's very interesting. This guy, Brian Sapp, says, are we not extensions of the planet? Is what we feel a manifestation of what the Earth feels? That PTSD you referred to, is that the Earth's PTSD? And I mentioned this before, where I feel like Earth peoples, like Earth grows people, like we grow on the surface, like apples.
Okay,
or whatever.
sure,
So
but
in that context, I think. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was going to say, well, think about it in this context then. Are you trying to tell me that I feel depressed and anxious because of the dust mites and skin mites that are on my body?
No, vice versa. Like the dust mites behave.
No. You were saying that we affect the Earth. Are you trying to say the Earth is depressed, so we're depressed, or we're depressed and we're depressing the Earth? See, that's what I'm.
We're like
because you're a
bacteria
bad
to
apple,
the Earth.
Neil.
Yes,
think-
no,
I
but
think if
you
you
also
look at
said
it-
there was a connection between us and it that sort of lent our feelings through.
Oh no, he's saying that does Earth feel the PTSD of the alignment and the aftermath, and then thusly we feel it? Like, does it trickle down from the Earth's PTSD? I think that's what
Oh,
he's saying, or
it-
Like
maybe
a collective
way-
memory.
The
If
way I
energy-
understand,
energy
the
is
way-
dispersed, if energy is efficiently dispersed into different creatures, like I believe it is across the crust of the Earth, all these living creatures all over it, if it's efficiently dispersed, then all of that energy collectively is there's
it's in our genetic code.
There's
Water carries memory, and our genetic code carries memory, and we have memory of this event contained within us to this day.
You know, believe it or
There's
not,
actually some real science on that.
well, I was about to say the thing that really conveyed it to me that made me think this might be possible, believe it or not, was cats and cucumbers.
Oh, scary stuff.
Well, no, but they see a cucumber and they freak out, and because it reminds
Same
them.
with
They,
bananas sometimes.
snakes.
yeah,
Serpents,
exactly. But they've never
snakes,
seen one.
Same psychology.
They've never seen a snake ever in their entire lives, but they know to jump and run away from it. Why?
Genetic memory.
Well, there you
we also
go. So
know
if that's the case, how?
To be afraid of deep water as well.
But how do
It's
you
the same.
pass something on that you yourself? I mean,
Morphic fields.
no.
Showing
Okay, no. I'm fine with all that idea about the passing on, but imagine trying to pass on something that you can't even comprehend.
That's
Well-
DNA. Everything.
Well-
Everything. We can't comprehend shit. None
No,
of it. We
I'm
can't
thinking
comprehend-
about the people who went through like Hiroshima when they try to tell you what it's like to go through an earthquake or Mount St. Helens going off. Like you're going through something you can't even explain, and you're passing that on to your, but this would have to be the whole world. The people who are left alive would all have felt it, and it would have to have been
Definitely.
passed down. That's the kind of feelings I have for that.
And it's the
so.
same genetic type of memory that we have when the bugs were huge and giant, like
Yeah, it's the
mosquitoes
farmer's
that we-
almanac.
2-foot
Basically.
wingspans,
A 6-foot wingspan
Farmer's
on a
almanac,
dragonfly?
everything.
Yep, I'm ready to freak out. Did you hear about that dragonfly swarm that's going over the state somewhere? I thought that was kind of cool. It was on the radar, so they freaked out.
I didn't hear about it.
Yeah, that's solid.
I heard. Oh, actually, I didn't know it was in the United States, but I did hear something about that. It showed up on a radar.
Just dragonflies, so.
But it's like if we can look at the cycles of everything in the farmer's almanac, it works the same way with, like right now, in the USA, we are 3 weeks behind on almost everything, all cycles, because we had a late winter, or for whatever reason, it's behind. Because the morels were behind, everything's behind, and we had a winter that went late into the season, and a late blossom. So if you look at all this stuff, what I want to try to paint the vision of, or the picture of here, is the symbiotic nature of all of this, the symbiosis, and this with layers like Birkeland currents. If you can envision this, there's creatures ahead of us. We and this is all solar cycles. If you think of it like a cycle,
Right.
and there's creatures ahead of us that we are dependent on, and if they die, we die. That's a filament. There's creatures behind us that if we die, they die. That's a filament. If there's plants. If a certain plant dies, that creature that was dependent on that. So there's multiple layers of growth surrounding us that not even anyone's ever cataloged, and that we're dependent on these cycles. We could all be here and saved by the Irish, like that gentleman that was talking about the Irish saved the world, how the Irish saved the world.
I'm Irish, and you just called us potatoes. I'm very offended.
I'm Irish too.
I'm just kidding, man. Don't worry. It's just funny. I couldn't believe it. I said he was going to say potatoes, I think. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, if you look at this, if you look at this as all creatures nested inside of each other as filaments and numbers away from a source energy, then it all wraps up into parity of sex unification, sex efficiency. That's why sex exists, because it is the efficient parity and of the double helix turning it into a male and a female. And the majority of vertebrates, they're almost all vertebrates, there's a male and a female. And all vertebrates, there's two lobes in the brain. Is that something that's similar? We have to look at these patterns and I mean, this is a separate thought, but one that we were talking about earlier is if you look at our growth as a species and you take into an account the technocracy that's happening right now, and the reason why everyone's rushing towards it is because they know that's where the growth is coming from.
No, because we're all addicted to Facebook.
Hang on, the shape of the pattern of what growth is mimicking the shape of what we are.
Okay.
So you look at fractals, and you look at growth, and you look at the coaxial filaments that is powering all of our cables. You look at those, and it is electric. It's an electric universe. Everyone knows.
That's why we saw Squatterman in the heavens.
We have filaments that are leading to everything. Even the wireless communication is fractal and could not have been possible without fractal antennas and the understanding of that and fractality. And you look at implosion, and then you look at science, and we are doing nothing other than growing closer to the properties of nature and how nature sustainably teaches novelty. All of this is novelty. That's why the greatest successes are startup companies right now, and they're being bought for millions and billions of dollars because it's new ideas. And these new ideas are very similar little fractal bubbles of our collective consciousness becoming greater and grander.
Do you want the ultimate in new ideas? Come buy the Electric Universe or the Electric View from me, just $1 million. I'll go make a whole new channel. Anyway.
Is that a Ben Davidson quote?
We're not going to talk about that.
You can delete that later. Sorry about that.
We can't. It's live. You just told the whole world we're all going to hell.
Ben Davidson is a good person, and we don't need to get into any of this, so we can continue.
Oh, well, no. I mean, obviously there's some concern there, but yes, I get the joke. But yes, there's the idea that we could actually, like that people want to, that people are trying to sort of run headlong into the technocracy. I mean, it is kind of addictive, but it's also kind of Brave New Worldy, where everyone is suddenly has to be perky and judged. I don't feel safe telling everybody everything. I mean, you can't be, not everyone can be happy-go-lucky and friendly all the time. I mean, people have their own lives, and some people want to be friends with those who seem to be outgoing and personable, but at the same time, they themselves don't have that confidence, but they want to be near it because it gives them a sense of comfort. I see all of this happening.
I have a quick question to add to what Buddy was talking about.
Please.
How do you view, or I think about, depression or addiction from this through the filter of Electric Universe or plasma cosmology?
Tanvir is going to say chakras.
Sorry?
No, Tanvir was talking about chakras earlier, and it was like, so as soon as you said that, I was like, Tanvir is going to talk about chakras.
Well, I was just thinking,
how could the sun? That's a good question. How could the sun be depressed? Can a planet be depressed, and why?
Right.
Because he has this really bad face because of all the sunspots.
Energy is being enervated from another source. There's a lot of reasons,
He's being made fun of by the other planets.
Well, Neil, you said something to the effect of, it's because blah, blah, blah is addicted to blah, 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 right? This idea that we sweepingly generalize parts of our culture right now publicly and on a live show and say, hey, part of the public behaves this way. That's a cliche. And I'm trying to
admittedly, that is a fault of pretty much everyone. Luckily, if you're the type of person who speaks in hyperbole, not necessarily people don't think that you're being that way, deliberately. So
I just mean like that. Do we? I think that language does affect reality. So if we talk about
it does.
sonoluminescence and talk about like sonic waves creating reality in the ether, just
Well,
if that's the possibility.
well,
No, I can go.
I just want to finish that last one.
Go ahead.
Just the last thought on that was, God damn it, I lost it. All good, go.
Oh,
Never mind.
Let's really talk about what addiction is and what
Yeah, exactly.
what the trigger is.
What is addiction?
The chemical that you produce in your brain when you get a favorable result is endorphins, and they flow through your brain and they give you a good feeling. It's a drug basically, and with
That's
those
also
endorphins,
that's rewarded constantly on a constant basis for any type of novel activity that becomes addictive.
yeah, I was going to say the human species is an addictive personality. There's no getting around it.
Biology.
Yeah.
Some people get addicted to food. Some people get addicted to drink. Some people get addicted to drugs. Some people get addicted to information. Some people get addicted.
And you need to
We
be
all
able to
have.
train yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's all
what it
about
is.
balance.
It is, and if you know what addiction is, you can master it, and you can have it be your slave, and you can have it do your work for you. Because what's really happening here is we are lost, thinking that we are screwed up in a million ways. All the psychologists and doctors are telling us this stuff. So everybody's on different pills for different things. Okay, there's a lack of gratitude and a lack of being thankful. Period. You start being grateful and you start being thankful, you will start feeling better. No matter, you count your blessings, you write out what you have going for you in your life, and the best part of what you got going for you is what's free. Always, what is free is always the best things that we have going for us, and we always tend to not count that as the biggest blessings.
Your friends, your family, the people that love you.
Air.
Your senses, your intelligence, your ability to comprehend, your stamina, your stick. I mean, without anything, just so our senses. What's really strange is our senses are detectors. They are electric detectors that are detecting impinging frequencies, and what they're detecting is in a logarithmic scale invariant reality is what they're detecting, because our eyes only pick up a logarithmic invariant amount of light that's around, and it's because reality, maybe our senses are picking up on these things because reality is constructed in a logarithmic scale invariant manner, which it is. And that's why we come to geometry. Everything is geometric. Everything has a shape. Everything has a pattern. And without going deeper into that, I wanted to touch on electric futurism. Electric futurism is where Elon Musk is right now. Elon Musk is an electric universe paradigm shifter. If you think about this, he's doing Tesla. He's doing. I know, we all have. Now we're looking at him like he's some sort of I don't know, whatever. Anybody can look at him in certain ways, right? But what's really going on here is he's an electric futurist. Now, if we're talking about catastrophe and catastrophism, we can shift our gears at any time and start talking about electric futurism and go into these neural networks and these neural skins and sheaths that they're talking about with these fibers. These little fibers are filaments. They're once again using what the universe uses as the geometric construct. So we're seeing form over function, or function over form, and it's the same thing. It's helical, and it comes down to these how to get into the computer. And so far, there's a lot of people who are building these brain. There's a BMI's brain something interface, and so far Elon Musk is the farthest along, and he just got like $1 billion from Microsoft, Bill Gates, and FDA approved it, and now 2020 people are putting them in their heads, and we're going to have the first people who have done this. There's other companies that are
I'm
doing
now
it.
having wondering if that's exactly what happened way back in the old days, and they were like sitting there going, "No, all you people that we cut that little part of your head out to like that little square out of trepanning back then, yeah, just to get the chip in."
If I may say, a vision that I've had based off of this, I've had visions where there is elderly people dying, and they're connected to these electrodes and stuff, and instead of keeping them alive, or they're controlled. They're using these and manipulating these for control to keep people on medication, people needing other certain things. I mean, honestly,
You're
it's a
freaking
shit
me
show.
out.
On the errata video, Lee Hooker talks about trepanning, and they were doing it for the reasons of allowing people's mind to connect better to the ethereal realm. Apparently, some reason, I can't remember exactly what she said, but something.
Anyway,
like that.
what I wanted to point out is that if you're watching right now, you're probably wondering what the hell you're seeing. This is actually Elon Musk's girlfriend, and this is her videos. We were talking about Dune earlier. Her name is Grimes from Yeety Prime. So that's just let you know,
so that we don't like start this.
No, I mean you can read the lyrics of what's going on and listen to the video later.
All this stuff is the same shit that was around 70 years ago.
Yeah,
it's glossier.
What was it called? The global
is made by people like who are 20 years old. The reason it's
the
all
global village,
Illuminati, and am I even being? Yeah, sorry. I was just saying Grimes is like this really popular artist, and what they do is that they hire people who are into conspiracy theories to spread more conspiracy theories. And I just want to make sure that things like this this evokes a reaction in an older generation across the world. It's like, look at what's ruining the minds of this next generation. In fact, it's not doing anything. It's basically just muddying science for them. It's this really weird delineation of like, take out all the sex and all the stupid shit and the violence and all these ideas and these tropes, and realize that young kids have no context for any of it. We are the ones who have context, the older generation. We're like, oh my god, they're spreading this trash, this et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I want to preface like
interesting
this. I feel
perspective. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
No, that's awesome. In fact, I would agree. It comes to mind when I think about like this video, for example, and Grimes, and obviously she's talented and so forth. I mean, there's a few out there that are, even great, but the idea that of what this is actually expressed, I think. Let's see if I can find it here. I love
knowledge.
Looking for stuff.
Sorry, while you're doing that, knowledge is not wisdom.
Knowledge is power.
Experience.
Experience. Okay, I know experience.
May I say a quote too?
Sure.
I had it on the tip of my tongue right there. Both of us did, Richard and I.
I'm sorry.
I think I can kind of explain it here. We are enhancing our collective consciousness through electricity. It is electricity, literally. Electric music. Think of music without electricity nowadays. What would it be? Think of anything that we do without electricity. We are now going into electricity because that's what consciousness is. We are extending into it. We are using electricity as an extension, as a tool to expand our consciousness. That's what I wanted to say.
I mean, aren't we also of it? in a way. I mean, our cells are electric, our brain is electrical impulses, EKGs, all the metrics from the
Well,
body are
clearly,
just like
almost
giant.
everything we
Yep.
do is based on that. I
Can't
mean,
explain. Yes, you
nuclear
can't explain
reactions, chemical
anything
reactions,
without electricity,
Yeah,
electrochemical. Everything's
every
a
single-
even momentum.
every single atom in your body is electric, and the things that you're surrounded with is all electric.
I do want to just go tangentially, and you can tell me you can shoot this one down. But the fact that we can see to a degree of like 20 miles on the surface of Earth, and the fact that you can see what seems to be infinitely with the naked eye to like what trillions and trillions of miles out into space. What's that all about? That kind of differential of, sure, I understand obviously the density and the Earth. I know the standard answer, but the idea that
You
within this
can't
consciousness we get to
actually-
have this massive overpowered sense just in one direction and everything else seems to be limited.
Well,
Well, if you think about it from the perspective, most brains aren't built with eyeballs. Most brains are built with noses. So everything's reality is mostly built with smell and taste. Most brains are taste and smell, and it's only until we start becoming more optical that we realize our reality of tools, a lenticular universe is what I'm gearing towards, where every time we start playing with lenses, we start seeing deeper into, like you were speaking of earlier, what was the word that you used specifically? I think, Chris, we have more attention or focus towards
resolve, focus.
Resolve.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's it. And I was going somewhere with that, but yeah,
but I mean, I was thinking like resolve, resolute, right? Like this adamancy of like moving forward. It's like a flow. It's almost a vector, right? It's vector language. Resolve.
Well, and why don't we have microscope eyes? I mean,
we sort of do though. That's what I was saying earlier
when you're
about
younger,
like the
especially.
like the eye of Sauron, like centering its focus. We are the eye of Sauron when it comes to mosquitoes or bugs or even quantum particles, right? To some degree, if you have enough of the tool that we like, I think there's this.
Thanks for the Saturn reference, by the way. It was very nice.
This mishmash of technology, like we feel like technology is other than human. Plastic is apart from human, but it's not. It's just a tool that humans have created. It's still also electricity and also a part of us. Therefore, with the big enough tool, you see these tiny things. And I guess similarly with telescopes too, you have to build these giant tools as an extension of the human body to perceive these magnitudes. But really, we can ignore those magnitudes entirely and still function. If you never looked at a bug and never looked at a star, you could still have a pretty full existence on Earth, right? There's so magnitudes really is like perception, focus. I think I bring it up a lot because those are the videos that I've looked for perpetually, and I've never found people talk about it from bringing physics into philosophy and metaphysics, and the idea. Okay.
Interdisciplinary.
Well, I've always maintained that each individual has their own perception of the universe and the things around them. We perceive things that are similar and we think of them the same, but there are slightly different little things. When somebody looks at that chair over there and someone else looks at that chair, there's slight differences in perception.
Thank you,
But
Bird
we still see the
Axlade.
chair.
We'll try to summon him with a big G. You're right. Everyone, think of the G
That's why
spot.
we do this. My quote is from Willy Wonka. It's where is fancy bread, in the heart or in the head? That's my quote.
I'd like to add something here.
Feel free. I hope you guys are watching because you talk about futurists. I immediately thought of Alvin Toffler with the the third wave and stuff like that, so I threw it on there.
Well, the idea that words have themselves power, I think, is fundamental. And one of the things about the deluge was that God denied man the ability to do that again. People think about, oh, it's God's fault, but they don't understand that man himself created that. And with man creating it, God then denied him the power and the ability to recreate it again. That's what that is all really about. So that the symbiosis, or the nature of man talking to himself, or the universe talking back, it's all kind of goes in a circle. Geez, I had more. There's so much going on here about the psychology of, who's doing what to what, and how's the reaction going back. There's an understanding that if you go into space, you leave the Earth itself and its restrictions, and so if you act badly towards another one, the universe itself is going to slap you. And so when people go out into space, they have this excuse to be very disciplined about doing everything that they do for a reason. And so they really don't have time to be kind of crazy, or how they would act on Earth towards other people. And that's basically what I have to say.
Right. It kind of goes to the same logic, or the same mindset, that if everybody on the planet believed that there was a great big blue bunny flying around in the sky that farted fire, it would manifest itself there.
No. No, I mean,
Well,
I can
actually-
accept the fact that you why you think that, but at the end of the day, no.
Well, let's actually take that. That's fun for 1
I'm
second.
actually pretty close to agreeing with what Richard just said.
No, I'm okay with you guys wanting to agree. And in fact, we can explore it.
That's how gods are imagined.
But the idea that you guys are talking about, the manifestation of will, it was really. I mean, actually, I think we could all. It's odd that you mention it now, because when I think about it, I was just thinking about it a second ago, because I was thinking of movies and stuff that represented some of the futurist ideas, and one of them came up with the sphere, and the way that willpower and whatever they thought was manifesting itself.
Can I throw in an idea here on how this 100th monkey effect actually can be explained logically? So the idea is that every generation gets taught the skills, the so-called general skill set, on a more refined tip. So it's whittled down through generations. So every generation learns piano the best way it's going to be taught, with all the tools and the best pianos ever. And the same thing with the cars, and the same thing with science. Every generation is going to get a much more honed in version of the skill set. So they initially will take an amount of time to learn a skill. However, they'll be ammoed up with some really great preliminary work. So it's not just this magic thing. Skills are handed down generationally through DNA, so-called DNA, but really more so on a pattern-based system. So people interact on certain types of topics. So, for example, to take Rick's example, if you sat in a courtyard with like 10,000 people for 50 years, and basically everyone said, we can fly, and you just get this guy to fly and try and fly, maybe you can achieve 3 feet, 5 feet of flight. That's the type of manifestation that might seem possible in this reality. At least like long jumpers now. Look at all the sports people. There are people who can run faster than ever before, play tennis better than ever before, long jump and just basically every sport. There are superhuman beings. From when I was a kid till now, it's not even comparable.
Actually, this is very interesting you brought that up. I want to, I strongly recommend looking this up yourselves, of course, to verify, but there was a gentleman who did a study on that, and he found that the technologies that, like, our sprinters from the 1800s really slower than sprinters from last century or this century. And he found that the technologies that we developed over time and the way that we more accurately measured certain things have allowed us to get these times. With the type of tracks we run on, they're not dirt anymore. They're not grass. The type of shoes we use give better traction to the thing. They're lighter. All of that has a lot to do with if you take those half seconds and 0.2 seconds off, where everything that you did, they're just as good as we were in many ways.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
but
running
that
in wool
cam-
underwear is really chafy, and it slows your times down big time.
They run on cinders, like compressed cinders back in the day. Knee roll, like, you know.
Well, no, I was only mentioning that because it
That's a fair
happened to be
point.
something I had seen. But you're not wrong that we are constantly developing new ways through either technology or otherwise to maximize ourselves.
And a 50-pound running shoe will slow you down too.
Look, they do it. It's called the production cycle. You learn the stuff from past projects and you implement them on new ones. Yeah, it tries to get it. Look, not everyone can do it, but that's what everyone tries to do, especially the successful corporations. So if you're talking about media, the people who we're all referencing and everyone has common knowledge of cultural media, these media companies have done a great job on getting you guys to remember all this shit about Indiana Jones or whatever we're watching right now. It looks like Lucy, but it's not. Marshall McLuhan.
Well, you first one was you're talking about futurism, so I first had to go to Alvin Toffler's The Third Wave,
It
and
is Marshall McLuhan.
and this
It
is
is
Marshall
Marshall.
McLuhan's The World is a Global
Good call.
Village. And one thing I really liked about this one, I watched this several times. It's from the CBC, but because he's Canadian. But this discussion turns out to be very interesting because he's referring to the book world and the TV world and how one is vulgar. And you guys were referring to how how we judge, one generation judges the next generation and its behaviors. And we're seeing the step not just from the media, like in fact, our problem that we were discussing earlier about how to bring people together was one of media and one of how to deliver different content to different people so it is absorbed.
Neil, the
And-
stream went down because of the CBC thing.
Oh, it friggin' geez. That's what happens, eh? That's what I get for
What's
friggin'
that?
put the CBC
Sorry,
on.
buddy.
No,
I'm
it's
watching it
fine.
live, it went down.
We'll let it pop back up. So it'll try to reconnect.
Oh.
I just gotta get rid of it.
Damn CBD.
No, I didn't think that the CBC would actually be copywritten,
Hey!
Of course. I'm
CBD
joking.
good.
Well, that's what happens when I leave it there for too long. It just gets, it goes, and freaks out. So no big deal. I'll go back to Greg J's channel and we'll just sit
Right,
there.
this means
I thought Canadians were into spreading the truth.
I know, eh?
it just means you're a pirate. That's good.
Policy violations. There we go. See, it's back up, right?
Yeah, good deal.
Accommodate. It is back up.
No, that's what happens when you apparently the BBC and the CBC are not people I should be showing around, apparently. No matter how much you like it. Oh, thank you, YouTube Premium. Go away.
Oh, how nice.
Should we talk about how planets are also conscious of
Oh,
us?
Grey J.
again?
Grey J. Yes,
Grey J.
Grey J. Anyway, yes, please go. Continue.
I mean, wouldn't the local cluster be aware of its own children, the planets and the solar systems, and therefore like quasars are also conscious at a certain level? I think it really is like I don't like to judge mankind because I do feel like words do matter, and if you just do these sweeping things where like mankind just sucks, because I try and refrain from stuff like that. But
If you
I
don't
feel
try to see the beauty in the world, there's a lot out there.
We are connected
Chris, this
to
is
everything,
cool.
just as the sun and the earth are connected to each other instantly through Tesla scalar waves. We're connected to everything. We just don't know that we're connected to everything.
Actually, I was
like
just going to
our
think that
CMEs.
maybe in a general sense that you get a good feeling from other people, and in a long-term sense, they're all related to you. But sure, scalar waves.
I mean, are we children?
This isn't a new idea. It's an ancient idea. We knew
we
that
got
it was
some
our
stuff
fault
on
that storms were coming. We knew that it was our fault in some way, or at least we felt this way, because we know that we're connected to the earth. and we used to know this a lot more, and then we realized we started calling all these things gods and stuff, and then what is it? Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because of debauchery and licentiousness and all of the other things. And we say that they were destroyed, but are they built on these dangerous places like LA, San Francisco? It's a dangerous place. They're dealing with dangerous stuff over there. They're also novel, I mean, they're changing. They're progressive.
Right. Sodom and Gomorrah might have been created on an ancient ark site, and then the ark came again and destroyed it.
Can I suggest?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I suggest that maybe, like, I'm just thinking while you were talking, like, isn't fear and death really ultimately tied to the end of joy in consciousness? Really, like, we're like, okay, we don't want the party to end. Really, that's why everyone's so afraid of catastrophism, and that's why we relate these theories, because really we do want to survive, and we do want to perpetuate. So what you're saying about the fault
Isn't
of
the
mankind,
combination of those two things dread, maybe?
but I mean, the idea of mankind being at fault is, to me, seems like like I relate it to propaganda of today.
Why would we blame ourselves?
Right.
What was the blame that was put upon us?
Well, a small
Yeah,
group.
Amen.
That doesn't make any sense at all, and we can grow past that if we understand the electric universe a lot better.
Well, there's a sense of becoming conscious in the Adam and Eve story, but and also in the Sodom and Gomorrah story, but both of them sort of have a sense that maybe just like some people looked at the the debauchery of the Romans, and all that cool stuff from the Spartacus show and crap. But if that was them, that kind of craziness, well, but if there was other people who suddenly recognized how bad that was, why did that become bad? What? And don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not against I'm not trying to judge Greeks, but obviously they did some bad stuff too. So, how did this righteousness or morality get fostered upon people? But I'm okay. I'm like don't get me wrong. I'm not necessarily into perversion. I'm just wondering where this comes from.
Isn't it the best way to get away with a crime? Sorry, go ahead, buddy.
If you look at all cultures, they all have barbarity, and they're all barbarics, and there's tendencies to be hedonistic, and it's part of what we are. And
It's survival.
if you look at, there was Fauci too. He just released a really good video. If you guys are privy to him, Fauci 2 on YouTube, great channel. But
what am I hearing? I'm hearing something.
I'm surprised that you haven't heard of him, Neil. Fauci 2 is amazing. He puts out just ridiculous info that actually he's on the forefront of the info cost. That's for sure. As far as putting.
No, I haven't. I'll have to do that. Actually, I can type it in right here since everyone knows what you're talking about.
But he did a video. Which video was I was going to reference? Brain fart. Fuck, now I hate when that happens. Sorry.
I searched brain fart. I find nothing.
Buddy, the only thing I'll say is that I feel like those videos should be longer and slower. Like, it's so much content that he's throwing at people. I think it's it's interesting.
Well, if you watch Vsauce, that's the consciousness that we're in nowadays. Everything is fast paced.
I'm really against that.
Not cool. Not cool.
2-minute physics and these like very fast sped up programs are really what's destroying the conversation, I think.
Let's put it this way. The 30-minute period of Connections 2 and Connections 3, okay, they're crap compared to Connections 1 because he had a full hour. Okay, and James Burke can talk to me for a full hour and I will understand the entire world when I'm done. Okay, but this whole 5 minutes, I can't deal
That's
with
what
that.
I'm afraid about Axonar. It was a 30-minute show. Now they got to do three 20-minute more shows only, and it's like, oh no.
Look, what happens is you don't like. I don't
Oh.
like to blame the content creators because it's not their fault. The parameters come from the editors and the higher ups, right? So they have to make a 10-minute PBS show that's like a certain length. They have to have the intro. They have to have the outro, and so there's 5 minutes of regurgitated stuff. The thing is, like, you know, and it sounds super judgmental and elitist for me, but I'm going to power through, which is that you really have to be able to discern, like, and a lot of people do. I read the comments. Tons of people can see through this shit. A lot more people than 6 years ago or 10 or 12 years ago on YouTube, for sure. So, it is encouraging, but it's also like the language about. I just want to finish up that one thought on the blame of mankind. I say it in every show I can. It's really important. The language of kind of sweeping blame, the original sin, mankind cancer, aliens come to planet Earth, and mankind's stupid, so they don't come here. This, if you keep reiterating that becomes the paradigm.
Yeah.
And really, everybody at NASA to everybody at PBS and literally everybody.
And thinking
in
of our
culture
ancestors
repeats
as
this stuff.
primitive sucks too.
Yeah,
the
it's
same
totally.
vein.
But it does create a vortex of brain. Like, it makes me personally, who doesn't believe in that at all, I feel like, of course, there were ancient cultures that were super. We don't know. We just don't know about cultures, and basically trying to peg them. And then two, the fact that you have this idea that people are completely stupid and you have to treat them like babies when it comes to information, like rain. Like, if you look up how rain works online, you'd be appalled at what you actually come up with, or how optics work, how the eye works. You'd be why does Khan Academy, like,
well, because online is now Google. Google is now online. That's what everyone goes to.
Okay, right.
And they control the information. If you go to DuckDuckGo, you will get completely different and more accurate ascertainable information.
Okay, sure. I just mean, I'm talking about, like, personally, I know where to go. I'm just saying within a group of people that we talk about, and I agree with you, but they're trying to talk to to bring in more people. No, well, I have people on my channel. I have people who, like, are on my channel for 3-4 years who I still have to kind of post my own links to my own music, who know my channel, watch hundreds of my videos. You still have to remind people we live in a culture where we can all barely keep up. Like, there's so much information.
Can you do that for me, or this for me?
There's so many things going on. You try and everybody wants to accommodate, right? But anyway,
I know. Remember, when that guy asked for this video, he said, "I don't really want this video with music." And another person was asking, and they were saying, "So I made the music video without music." And then another one was like, "Oh, can you link all these things?" And as you know, if you have YouTube, you only have so many things you can link. So you only put so many cards in, as it were, you know, and then you have your end thing for your, if you want to do that. So there's limitations, and you feel bad, and you try to post those extra links in the description and all that stuff.
It's just like, I'm gonna finish my last thought and I'll shut up. Is like, it's just self-conscious. You have to be like, okay, I used to say and chuckle, oh, aliens can't come to Earth because mankind's so stupid. But really, mankind is kind. People are families. People are of all different cultures and races. Like, the real truth behind it. Yeah, we could snicker all the way to never uncovering new physics, you know, or we could just man up and say,
if we didn't
okay,
make larger and larger tribes that could eventually destroy ourselves with the amount of firepower that we have, like the entire surface of the planet, then this wouldn't really be an issue. Because
but we could also create festivals and
but we need protection.
Teach music, and you know. But there's also an amazing wave of rise of musicians teaching amazing things on YouTube. YouTube is fascinating. It's
this world is just blowing up that we're about to step into. I totally agree with you. And
bring back Saturnalia.
All right, I'm gonna shut up now.
And I want the people to actually experience some of that, because one of the things that we have a lack of is like, as we were talking earlier about trying to make things a little bit more, I don't know, we're hip, or at least approachable, or the way that they're used to digesting it nowadays. Like, there's an entire generation of children who have been raised on, what's his name, PewDiePie, you know, like, these type of videos, that are very
Yeah.
So
But
you might
we
as
have
well.
to really be aware of how many
That
views
guy
are
is
like
toxic.
but the views are really fabricated for tons of these videos that
Oh,
no
I'm
one
not-
really understands. Yeah, I just want
I
to make
don't
sure
mean-
PewDiePie like reached this level because people are picked and created to fill these. It's the hero's journey being played out on YouTube.
Actually, I don't know if that's the case. I think that I heard there's something about him moving from country to country, so that because of that, he ended up being top in a bunch of countries, which made him go skyrocketing. But anyway, that's not important because I don't care. What I mean is, and don't get me wrong, I mean obviously algorithms, are things fair? Are they not? Playing the game, that kind of thing.
It does matter. I mean, this is the guy who could say something and affect 20 million people. It really does matter, actually, but people don't want to talk about it because it's blasphemous to say PewDiePie is like not cool or Joe Rogan's not cool. But I'll say it flat out: these guys are just the most uncool people. And
Really?
like they get to the biggest audiences. Yeah, I mean they are. If you really push these people on fronts of like breaking down the consciousness we live in, it feels.
I don't find anything that. I mean, I've watched Joe Rogan for years, even when he was friends with Alex Jones, and I wasn't. I didn't see him as like raving or anything.
There's no raving at all. It's
No, I mean, he just doesn't seem.
I mean, he's supposed to. He plays the part perfectly. I just mean it's like it's completely like with the. It's like people like Oprah don't discuss things like the electric universe or science or anything. None of them have telescopes. None of them talk about science.
That's
Not
true.
a single celebrity who
But
has
why
a
would
ton
they?
of money. I have no money, and all I do is talk about science and space. I'm not special. Like it's amazing. It's freaking. Listen, there's this big paradigm switch that people like. It's a pretend thing. The powers that be know how important science and space is. The media pretends that it's not, and then 90% of people think it's not, but it absolutely is like the most important thing that's most invested in, right?
Science doesn't matter at all. Who would give a crap about that as they play with their iPhone? Like.
Yep. They turn it all into satire with the Big Bang Theory and with anything that's sciencey.
I also noticed that that the most smart person was picked on in this Big Bang Theory. That was messed up.
Exactly. That's the point. Well, see, I'm actually very much like Sheldon. Many people have told me like this my whole life. I'm weird AF, and like I will say stuff and just totally off the rocker, and it's. I do get treated like like I'm dumb, but I'm okay. I'm totally fine dealing with that. Maybe I'm an idiot savant. Maybe I'm not a savant at all. But I've been called both. So I mean, what are we really? I mean, as an individual, Neil, I can call you all sorts of wonderful things. We've all been called wonderful things. We've all been called names that hurt us and names that lift us. So
words are magic. Yeah.
I just wanted to say.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I didn't mean to insult Joe Rogan or any of these people, or PewDiePie even. They deserve to be where they are. I really want to clarify. I'm not trying to just throw shade. I just think it's important for.
I am. Screw those guys. I don't care.
Well, to be able to discern music or anything, you have to learn. So what I'm saying is, look, if people think that because Joe Rogan or because PewDiePie is super popular, therefore I can trust their viewpoint, is what's pushed in the media.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that being able to discern
That's celebrity,
and know how celebrities are created by people who don't know better than you. But because of investment and because of branding, you created like essentially people who are now tastemakers. But then they invade science, which is terrible for science. I mean, I'm very adamant about it because it's important. Like because smart people do it too. Intellects like snicker at each other, but we propagate this. See, I'm saying it now. We propagate. Who am I to speak for any of you?
Yeah, and I was about to say, well, in a way, don't. I kind of Aren't I
But
kind
wanna-
of infecting it?
No, I'm saying like I'm trying to catch myself every time I say things like that because it's part of the virus. I think the virus of like sweepingly generalizing the human race as this terrible beast makes it a terrible beast. If the powers that be propagate that kind of information and we repeat it at each other, who are we that to say any different? Because if we don't know, we don't like what I'm saying is we have this idea of the universe being better than it can be, idealistically. But like people are really suffering because the media creates an image of suffering. Old
Correct.
people are suffering because they can't get their meds. Young people are suffering because they're like like drills at school. We can't get our fucking science shit together. People can't get jobs coming out of college because they're in debt. Right? These things are really real. If you could solve very simple things, we would have advanced science like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I piggyback off of that and add to it and say that if you realize what's really going on here, like you're saying, there's a lot of deeply rooted Satanism, and it's weird to use that word, but I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to say that the number of the beast is 666, and you look at carbon, and it's 666, 6 electrons, six protons or whatever. So you look at that and you add to it that we've always been telling ourselves that we're the beast. You know, in a way, we know that the devil is in us and God is in us. And to worship the beast is to worship yourself. Do what thou will. That's it. Period. And if you live a loving life and love other people your entire life, but self-serve your entire life, you're doing the opposite of what servants and what the highest order of caliber of beings are. Is servants.
6 electrons, 6 neutrons, 6 protons.
I completely appreciate that. I was going to say, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Can I just further for one more
of course,
thing?
Please.
You take that concept and you add global warming, and we are the beast again. You point it to us. We are always being pointed at as the beast, but it's to make money off of. This time it's lucre.
Well, actually, maybe to defer blame from who it rightfully belongs to. Like, it doesn't necessarily belong to us. I mean, the amount of straws that we are not going to use will make no difference compared to the amount of industrial runoff or waste that is infecting waterways, for example. I mean, one person, it would take cities to cities of people breathing and driving to take over the amount that one factory produces.
Yeah, it's doublespeak. The yachts that everybody drives.
Yeah.
And then Mrs. Captain Save America hero rides over on a sailboat and says, "Save the planet. I demand you. Now save the planet." This Thunberg girl who everybody is looking at as this hero.
Greta?
It's bullshit. It is literally using children as weapons. That's a weaponizing children through weaponizing.
I would generally agree with you.
Screaming about
hold on. I know that I'm not one. Don't get me wrong. I'm not necessarily defending global warming, but I understand where these people are thinking that this is right, and they're trying to do what's right. And she has a wonderful story, but if you've heard her talk, you know that she's quite smart. Like, smarter than I thought that I was going to see. Like, I was expecting a speech was one thing, but to actually hear a conversation.
Probably and most likely a psychopath.
I don't really know if that's the case, but I mean, maybe she's like doing this. I don't know, but Jane Goodall doesn't feel like a psychopath to me, and she does like a lot of good things too.
Well, I would just like to point out to 2 studies that were done about global warming. And one was a Finnish group of scientists from Finland, obviously, and they came to the conclusion that the sun drives the climate on the planet, and it was backed up by a Japanese group of scientists that redid the study and backed it up. Backed up the
I'm
science.
with you. Okay, okay. I'll tell you. Watch this. We're going to have a little fun here because I'm actually going to do this. Okay, so. everyone just tell me, what are the chances between the conventional global warming idea, okay, and the idea that the modern minimum is coming up, okay, electrically speaking, and we should experience a cool down. So between those two choices, what is it, 50-50? 100 on one side, 0 on the other? What do you guys think?
I think it's all our fault.
I'm getting an echo, so I'm not sure why. Actually, I'm still getting an echo. I'm hearing my own voice. Okay.
I don't think we can know because we don't have a plasma model.
Okay. That's very convenient. Okay.
Well, if you flip the coin, it doesn't matter. This little girl who has Asperger's, I guess, or something like that, she represents to society our responsibility to children in general. But I don't think we really need to get on that. What she's opposing is a death cult. And science, however much we love it, the establishment of science is a death cult because it says that the world is the philosophy of materialism, where the world is dead, and that there's no possibility of electrical connections. The consciousness is not possible. So your consciousness itself is a self-delusion. So they are self-proclaimed delusional, which I think we should believe them. I'll leave it at that.
However,
100%.
Now, well, the reason I brought up the numbers game, and I don't know what your number is, okay, but just from listening to James here, I think the number was not 100%. And the reason I said that is because I was thinking to myself, what number of percentage would I roll the dice, like if I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, okay, and I knew that I had to roll a natural 20 for something or whatever, but at what percentage would I not roll the dice on the entire world? If you get my meaning. So my number was really, really low. Like, I don't think, if I was 99% sure, which I'm pretty sure, see what I mean, that the modern minimum is going to happen, and we're going to probably be a little bit saved from this global warming that we've caused probably to ourselves, but maybe not. Because there is some instances where this is very true, and there's other instances where I'm not so convinced. So I have to judge carefully. But either way, the only thing that we end up doing is just costing a little bit of money. I mean, a GDP or production or something, and we go in the wrong direction for a little bit. But at the end of the day, if we're wrong, I'm wrong and it's 1%, well then, thank fucking God. You know, I didn't mean to swear there, but you know what I mean?
Neil, let me ask. This whole climate change thing.
Does it seem weird?
If the news didn't report it as such, it just wouldn't exist. It would, but it wouldn't really. Like in the essence of this brand culture, this idea of the hole in the ozone, global warming. This is a coined term by a board group. And the fact that we use it just interchangeably with these things, that it's essentially this massive distraction, in my opinion, personally. I know I'm being very
I'm actually not arguing with that, because like you said, I'm not sure if it would be
almost
existence.
like a religious cult right now.
Well,
right?
the answer to
I'm old
life
enough to
and the
remember
universe and everything is 42.
I was able to remember this.
Okay, Douglas.
I was able to remember long ago when I was a kid about a story. It was James Burke himself, actually, who did a whole thing on the coming ice freeze. I have a video on it I managed to find somewhere. I don't even know where. And so I have it again. But that was basically, they thought that there was literally in the 1970s, it was going to turn to ice. We were going to get, ice age. And so, yeah, I can see exactly where you're coming from. The idea that we're affecting the planet. and
Look,
is
it might.
you
The
know
thing is, it might turn into an ice age, and we might all die in like a catastrophe. However, the discussion of it is this kind of philosophical no-no, right? If you're a real Zen master, you're not going to sit and worry about when the catastrophe is coming. I know it's good to talk about plasma history to understand the physics of it all, but in fact, if we all put our minds to one solid, like if you had a team leader, remember, I think I mentioned this on the last show, but like if we all put the Democratic candidates right now, they're all arguing against each other. If they all said, hey, let's all be president, all 10 of us or whatever, it would work way better. It would be much more logical. Instead of us, like, I'm not saying I'm directing the way
the
of the show.
Democrats.
I'm
Those are
saying
Americans, right?
whatever. Yeah, just I mean, political
I'm just
parties
having fun.
infighting is just this absolutely absurd thing that exists, and people take it seriously. If literally everybody on Earth said the news is absolute bullshit and a corporate entity, and I'm just going to stop watching it, would they just vanish in a wisp of ether smoke? Because imagine, they function because
They'd
people
be
allow
gone
them to
faster
function.
than Blockbuster, and you're absolutely right. This situation that we're existing in right now is the movement towards alternate media has allowed us to thrive, and I think that it is probably the future. But there's never going to be stopping these Goliaths who try to game the system. And
Is
this is
that
where
like
Netflix comes
Neil?
from, right?
Us in the electric universe have had the shovel to the face.
More than once.
Well,
Hey,
yeah,
Neil,
but we're a very small group.
I'm making a connection between a couple of things. That are what we see, if it can be described as easily, I mean, as concisely as possible in politics all over the world, is factionalization, division, conflict. It's them against us, us against them, kind of a thing. Is a real heavy theme throughout the world, and certainly in the USA.
Okay.
Climate, we're seeing a similar parallel with climate in that it's not like going to get super cold or going to get super hot. We're going to see extremes of factionalization of weather zones, where some places it's going to get colder and some places it's going to get hotter, and those places are going to be unstable and often change, which is going to create a difficult climate for everyone. So I mean, that seems like, am I wrong in making that connection? It seems to me, if you're saying that the universe is connected to human thought, it would not we see that in the weather and the world and the electrical charges
I'm
of
just
the world
saying,
around us?
what I'm really just
And do
quickly
we not?
saying,
Is what I'm suggesting.
I'm saying that,
There's
yeah.
plenty of examples of people who call the wind and who call storms. So I mean, that's one example we see.
I feel like weather watching, and it's wonderful. This is something we should do. I just feel like we also, it's about focus, right? If a team wants to get something done, you ultimately have to decline some things to do that other thing. And I feel like climate change is this huge thing that, yes, while could be real, could be a catastrophe, could be man-made, could be not man-made, could be a conspiracy, just any type of focus towards that version of that story seems to be a distraction from actually like everybody's effort being focused on one type of project for effect.
Well,
I've never been interested in which factor is greater than the other. If there are factors that are contributing to a lack of stability in our environment, we should be looking at them. I'll be honest with you, I've been yelled at for recycling. So, I'm a bleeding heart liberal to the core, apparently. And the truth of the matter is that I think labels are silly, but I certainly think that we're seeing climate extremes in the world around us. And I think there are probably lots of factors that are leading to that. And we should consider all of them without saying one is stupid and one is smart, or one is good and
now
one is
that
bad.
I do agree with, generally speaking, because things have been unseasonable for, I've seen, but at the same time, we've also seen amazing amounts of snow, and apparently back in the 40s, it wasn't so bad. So in the like in the 70s and early 80s, there was a ton of snow. We used to park snowmobiles on the roof, but and I remember the on the side of the roads, the banks were just towering high, like 10 feet.
Well, when I was just commenting on Matty Yu, he just made a comment in the 70s. going into the next new ice age. When I was a kid, the snowbanks were 6 foot high
Yeah.
everywhere on every street when I was a kid in Toronto. We haven't seen snowbanks like that in Toronto for years, but it's coming back.
But we did get it.
Agreed.
Moncton got 5.3 meters of snow a couple years ago, which is, as you know, pretty well, a lot of snow. And we had to take it outside the city, as probably Toronto does too, because you can't. Obviously, you have to get rid of it. You know, you can't keep it around.
Right.
And to make room for more snow when it falls. But yeah.
Oh, you guys are in the snow belt. Toronto is south of the snow belt.
Yep, just a bit.
Yeah, so you guys see a lot more snow than Toronto does. But again, I mean, that snow belt is not always staying in the place where it is now because of changes to the
But
electrical
you're right.
environment.
I mean, I'm not saying I mean the distraction idea, but it also, the way that you say it and the way that you're talking about conflict, that's not universal, and it's also not universal with regards to time. There are moments where people can come together much easier than others. Obviously, external threats are good, but one of the things that immediately comes to mind is, and probably one of the reasons why Canada and America are different on the whole, is that we had to bridge that French-English gap, and that was hard. But remember, it might seem hard, but at the end of the day, and I hate to say it this way, because one of the evils that we were talking about earlier, way back when I wanted to talk about, that we didn't get to talk about, and one of the reasons why this is on the screen is because way back then you mentioned one of the things that people put in their heads that could change everything, and then you asked it rhetorically. I'm not sure who it was. I think it was Chris. I said in my head, but I didn't get a chance to speak. My thoughts were, oh, that's easy, race. Because if you don't think about it, it doesn't exist. We're just different colored people. Like you would just automatically assume, oh, you must have grown up nearer to the equator. Is that what happened?
Well,
you wouldn't think anything of it. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? Because this place makes you that, just the way that our place makes us thus.
I've never looked at race before. I've always looked at people.
Well, no. I mean, it's part of the thing that sticks in your head. But I wasn't trying to bring that up as a conversation piece to tangent. But then that was the thoughts that popped in my mind, and with regards to the magic of words, the things that just suddenly someone could say.
And it's a good way to divide people too.
Yes, exactly. It's terrible. It's a terrible idea. And of course, it has to be taught and learned, and has to sort of flow through. I'm going to take an opportunity actually before we go any further. Yes, of course. But I want to point this out. Someone had asked a question. I think it was Sully. They asked, I'm still trying to understand how the magnetic fields hold Saturn in place, or something to where the polar configuration. That never stuck out of my head, because we were supposed to talk to Greg Jag, obviously, today, guys, and it didn't really happen. I mean, we're sort of winding down now. I mean, it's been, I guess, we've been running for 2.5 hours, so yeah, I guess.
Well, we've been running for 2.5 hours live, but we've been talking since 1 o'clock.
Oh,
so
shush.
3.5 hours.
Let's not make them think that there's
afternoon.
extra parts of this show that they're going to ask me to make. So, what you got?
Ellie's girl 89 says it's dying, Neil.
It's dying, Neil. Yeah,
It's dying, Neil.
but
This thing, I never understood why they're talking about the polar configuration as some kind of unknown thing, because that's what a galaxy arm is. It's a polar configuration. It's delayed. It's polar configuration.
okay, that could be. We tend to think of things, maybe the idea of an up and down to a galaxy, even though that's not even exact. I mean, there's no such thing. Could possibly creating it.
So is a Herbig Haro object. That's a polar configuration, a line of stars in a line.
Sure. But this, one of the things that is hard to imagine that I want to actually mention that some people have a problem with, if you notice this big, this side of this image here is like supposed to be represent current fields, I guess, because they're wrapped around magnetic fields and so forth. But what's the truth of the matter is that this object has a magnetic field, and you can't get any closer to that without your field bumping pretty severely into that field. And if you have two magnetic/electric fields, there is a limit to how close you can get to the other charged body without being repelled by it because of your internal core. So this is what keeps these things bouncing back and forth from each other. So I figured I'd explain that because it's hard to envision, but we were sitting there inside of the donut of the magnetic field of Saturn, and we would sort of the planets without magnetic fields, Venus and Mars, between us, had their own connection, but at the same time, they really couldn't get out because our magnetic field was pushed up against Saturn's magnetic field in their donut. We were inside their donut hole. Our donut's not as big as their donut.
Well,
But
Mars probably had a magnetic field in the past after it got
no, actually,
devastated.
it had
probably
a
got turned
crustal.
off, right?
It had a crustal magnetic field from hits, as far as we know. There's no planetary
No, I mean
magnetic field.
before all of this really started going on, it probably had a magnetic field and it was held in place by its magnetic field, with Saturn and Earth between it, and then the birth of Venus just destroyed everything.
We do know that there's polarity beyond what, I mean, even Venus itself, even though it doesn't have a magnetic field, happened to have one at a time when it was created, because we can see that it has a ring around the middle and poles. This is the same thing that we see with geodes. We can tell that they were formed in an electrical situation because of those factors.
Well, isn't the fact that Venus is screaming hot, isn't that the reason why it doesn't have a magnetic field?
I meant during its creation, it had to be in one. That's all I meant.
Well, yeah, it had to be inside Saturn's magnetic field, obviously.
Well, I don't even know who birthed it, but I agree with on that sense. But Mars
the Greeks
itself,
say
from a
Saturn
long time
birthed
ago, it had polar hits because we could see deposition in the south and the north. We see these type of things. It is angled though, but there seems to be this inflow along those. Like, for example, the northern part was scoured clean, obviously, compared to the southern, which was pockmarked.
Oh, 6.5 kilometers of it was ripped off of it.
That's pretty scoured. If I take 6.5 millimeters off your skin, how are you going to feel? Anyway, but
scrubbed down by
yeah.
ratchet.
Yes.
Clean shaven, baby.
That's like an android's bottom. So Data disagrees. Then the turbolift closes. So I remember that scene way too much. He shook his head no, I think. Anyway, so we're taking off soon, guys. I just wanted to know if there's anything else that we wanted to touch on. Obviously, we're hoping that Greg's okay. I don't know what's happened. Hopefully he'll be on later, and he just overslept. I've done it myself, so I can't really complain, right? And yes, Venera, Janot's site there is fantastic.
We don't judge. We don't judge.
And yes, we don't judge. So,
all right. Well, I'd like to thank some of the participants in the live chat: Michael Wise, Binera, Sully, Cole, Robert, Sully, or David.
You trust these people?
Well, I mean, I'm just thanking them
They
for
trust
being
you.
here. Lauren.
They must trust him. I don't
Kronos. Everybody that is in the chat right now, thank you for being here.
Yeah,
The,
guys,
the
appreciate it.
thankening.
The thankening.
Thankening has occurred.
Well, it's actually
good meeting. I appreciate it. It's really good stuff.
It's been fantastic. So, guys, yeah, I guess we'll call it right now. Thank you very much for showing up.
So
Take care, my friends. I'm going to do that whole thing where I'm going to like slide to the outro because I'm all cool. Because I can actually hit it now. Awesome. See if it just automatically starts sliding out. There it goes. Perfect.